Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today I will analyze the case of Matt Wright. First I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the incident, then offer my analysis. Matt Wright was born on August 29, 1979, and lived in Australia. From an early age, he took an interest in dangerous and exotic animals. On a routine basis, he would catch snakes and spiders and keep them in his bedroom. What other people would consider a nightmare was just another day for him. As an adult, Matt worked as a horse wrangler, a crocodile egg collector, and served in the Australian Army. He established his own business in Darwin in the Northern Territory. He offered people tours on airboats and in helicopters, and owned his own helicopter business called Hallibrook. Matt employed helicopter pilots and was a pilot himself. In 2011, he starred in a reality series on National Geographic titled Outback Wrangler. The show followed Matt's adventures as he relocated crocodiles and collected their eggs in order to manage their population. He was like a real-life version of Crocodile Dundee. Outback Wrangler had 28 episodes across 4 seasons. In 2022, Matt was featured on another television reality series, this time on Netflix. It was titled Wild Croc Territory and has 10 episodes in 1 season. The Northern Territory government put up $250,000 to fund the production of this show, referring to Matt as one of the true success stories out of the Northern Territory and a global export. In addition to his television adventures, Matt is active on social media. He has almost 900,000 followers on Instagram and over 110,000 subscribers on YouTube. Some of his videos feature his wife and his 2 children. Here are a few video titles from Matt's YouTube channel that sum it up pretty well. Matt Wright's closest call ever. Matt swims with a crocodile. Matt gets chased by a big crocodile. Matt lets an enthusiastic guest feed a giant croc. Scouting the area for crocs with the family. And Matt swims with a wild crocodile. That last title raises the question, is there any other kind of crocodile? I think they only come in wild. Now moving to the timeline of the incident. On February 28, 2022, 3 Robinson R-44 helicopters were on a mission in Arnhem Land in the Northern Territory to collect crocodile eggs. Each helicopter had a pilot and an egg collector. In order to get the egg collector was attached to the helicopter with a 100-foot line, so they dangled below the helicopter. Supposedly, this was the safest and easiest way to grab the crocodile eggs from the nests. The plan was for 3 helicopter crews to collect eggs from about 15 nests, which were located within 55 miles of the King River. At 7:03 a.m., the helicopters departed from Nunama and traveled to Mount Borrowdale, where they were to refuel. They departed this location for the King River area at 8:30 a.m. and arrived 20 minutes later. The 3 helicopters split up to start the egg collection mission. One of the helicopter crews comprised a 28-year-old pilot named Sebastian Robinson and a 34-year-old egg collector named Chris Wilson. Chris was on the line below the helicopter so he could be lowered onto the crocodile nests. At about 10:24 a.m., one of the pilots from the other 2 helicopters realized there were no radio communications from Sebastian and Chris. The pilot flew to the area where their helicopter was operating and found a wreckage at 10:36 a.m. This was 18 miles south of South Goulburn Island. Sebastian was next to the aircraft, seriously injured. Chris was 130 feet away from the wreckage. He had been killed. At 1:10 p.m., Sebastian was airlifted to a hospital. He survived, but was paralyzed. Trace amounts of cocaine were detected in his system, but investigators do not believe he was impaired. Here's what was discovered during the course of the investigation. The crash helicopter was a 4-seat Robinson R-44 Raven II with a 205 horsepower 6-cylinder engine. The helicopter had been operating for Matt Wright's company, Hallibrook, since October 2020. The combined usable fuel capacity of the main tank and the auxiliary tank was 46 gallons. Both fuel gauges recorded empty in the wreckage. The cause of the crash was fuel exhaustion. There was nothing else wrong with the helicopter that would have brought it down. Investigators determined that Matt's company had an operational culture of distrusting the fuel gauges. Sebastian relied on flight time calculations to manage his fuel, but his calculations were inaccurate. He missed a refueling opportunity, believing he had enough fuel. When he lost engine power, Sebastian released the line that was holding Chris below the helicopter. This is part of the normal and accepted emergency procedure. However, the human sling rider is supposed to be released within 15 feet of the ground. When Sebastian released Chris, the height was much greater. It was a non-survivable height. The operations manual for Matt's company indicated that the pilot was to jettison the sling immediately in an emergency, without specifying a minimum altitude for release. Here we see a discrepancy between the normal and accepted emergency procedure and the one specified by Matt's company. After cutting Chris loose, Sebastian was supposed to auto-rotate to safely land on the ground, but his altitude was too low for this procedure. Even though Sebastian let the helicopter run out of fuel, the investigation focused on the culture at Matt's company as a contributing factor. Within a few hours of the tragedy, Matt flew to the scene of the crash. He allegedly removed some items before playing around with the dash. Another helicopter pilot said that Matt took Chris Wilson's phone and threw it into the ocean, saying that his wife, meaning Chris Wilson's wife, did not need to see what was on it. Not long after the crash, investigators became suspicious of Matt Wright. They did not believe he was responsible for the crash in any way, and he was never blamed for that. Rather, they believed Matt was trying to interfere with the investigation. From October to December 2022, law enforcement spied on Matt with listening devices and by monitoring his phone calls. During one conversation with his wife, Matt said, "I don't write blank down. I don't even have a blanking logbook." Matt initially told the police that the helicopter had half a tank of fuel when he looked at the gauges right after the crash. In a recorded conversation that occurred later, he told someone else that he didn't see any blanking fuel in the tank. 0. 11 days after the fatal crash, Matt visited Sebastian in the hospital and asked him to transfer about 15 to 20 hours off the flight records of the crash helicopter to a personal helicopter. Matt allegedly deleted items from Sebastian's phone, including notes about flying hours. Sebastian claimed that Matt was anti-vaccination and broke COVID-19 restrictions. He was not allowed to go on Aboriginal land because he wasn't vaccinated. Matt allegedly asked a friend to burn the crash helicopter's maintenance records. He may have been worried that investigators would discover the Hobbs meter in the helicopter had regularly been disconnected. This is a meter that tracks how many hours the helicopter has flown. Some operators disconnect this meter in order to increase the time between expensive maintenance procedures. Matt was arrested and charged with 3 counts of attempting to pervert the course of justice. The first count was for lying about the fuel tank. The second count was for asking Sebastian to alter flight records. And the third count was for asking a friend to destroy the maintenance records. On July 30, 2025, Matt Wright's trial started. On August 29 of that year, he was found guilty on the first 2 counts of attempting to pervert the course of justice. The jury failed to reach a verdict on the third count. They were not convinced that Matt asked a friend to destroy maintenance records. Matt will be sentenced on October 6, 2025, when he will be facing up to 15 years in prison. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. In looking at the content produced by Matt Wright, he follows a pattern which is familiar for TV personalities who deal with dangerous and exotic animals. In many of his videos, Matt appears to simply be harassing the crocodiles. He sneaks up behind a crocodile, startles it, and then jumps back when the crocodile lunges at him. Matt also likes to put his hand near a crocodile's mouth and push the crocodile away. In one video, Matt talked about how if anyone else tried to do that, they would be seriously injured, implying that he was an expert who was somehow safe. There's a sense that Matt believed he was special. He had this amazing ability to deal with crocodiles, and they respected him. It seems like it's just a matter of time before Matt gets injured or killed by a crocodile, If he ends up going to prison, he might be better off, due to Australia's notoriously low crocodile incarceration rate. Item number 2, do I believe that Matt Wright is guilty of attempting to pervert the course of justice? In my opinion, Matt is only guilty on the second count, the one involving him asking Sebastian to transfer flight hours from the crash helicopter to a personal helicopter. The basis for the first count was Matt lying about the fuel tank level, but he could have simply been mistaken. As far as the third count, the audio recording of the conversation involving the request to destroy the maintenance records was very poor. I think Matt was not guilty on this charge. As I mentioned, the jury deadlocked on the third count. Even if Matt is only guilty of one offense, which is my opinion, this is still a serious matter. This brings me to item number 3. What do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. Matt Wright is arrogant, excitement-seeking, and fearless. He became interested in working with wild animals, including crocodiles. Matt never intended to become a television star, rather he just stumbled into that line of work. In the Northern Territory, tourism is a $100 million a year industry. Many tourists are interested specifically in crocodiles. Part of this interest may have been generated by the 3 Crocodile Dundee movies, especially the original in 1986. The actor Paul Hogan transformed the character, Mick Dundee, into a likable and dependable man of action who could survive in the rugged terrain of Australia. Some people who visit Australia want to get the full outdoor and adventurous experience, which includes dangerous creatures like crocodiles. When they look at Matt Wright, they see someone like Mick Dundee, or maybe Steve Irwin, a courageous and confident tour guide who can provide them close encounters with dangerous animals. Matt became a popular tour operator and was important to the Northern Territory. He truly was a success story, as they stated. Unfortunately, Matt also became greedy and created an unsafe culture in his helicopter company. This allowed him to decrease operating expenses, but that came at the expense of safety. In February 2022, when the helicopter crash killed Chris Wilson and severely injured Sebastian Robinson, Matt was worried and fearful about his financial future. He said it took a lot of years to get where he was, and he wasn't going to let them take that away. In his effort to deflect blame, he engaged in criminal behavior. This is a stunning fall from grace for someone who is admired by so many. Matt is going to appeal his conviction, but the damage is already done as far as his reputation, at least in my opinion. His story is yet another example of how the same characteristics that make animal adventure stars popular can also lead to their undoing. Matt was able to escape the jaws of crocodiles, but not the jaws of justice. Those are my thoughts on the case of Matt Wright. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon.